Welcome to Instant Impact with Elyse Archer. I'm your host, Elyse, and I got to tell you, this episode is for you if you feel like you're the best kept secret in your space and you are frustrated and you think, gosh, I'm really good at what I do. Why do I not have more people coming to me? Why do I not have press and media attention? And why is my brand not where I think it could be yet in terms of visibility and recognition? And I know just from the work that I do that there's a lot of you who are frustrated by that. And one of the things you have to realize is simply that there is a strategy to being featured in the press, to being seen in the media. And if you're seeing your competition showing up in the media and you're frustrated that you're not there, well, then very likely it just means that they have been intentional about reaching out and working to get featured, whereas you may not have been up until this point. And so what I wanted to do today was bring on a real expert for you, who knows how to get featured in the press, how to get media. And my guest today is Rachael Bozsik. She's a thought leadership coach for female entrepreneurs. And I loved our conversation in this interview because she shares really the nuts and bolts of what you need to know to get press. From how do you know where you should try to get featured? Should you be going for podcasts? Should you be going for major media? Should you be going for print, for digital? How do you pitch the press? So how specifically should you be reaching out to the press? How do you incorporate it into part of your daily routine? And I was actually surprised by some of what she shared in this part, but it's super tactical and much easier than even I thought it would be. So she's just a wealth of knowledge. I think you're going to love learning from her if you are really ready and wanting to get featured more in the press and start getting more of this major attention on your brand. And again, you can't serve people if you're not known, right? That's one of the things we say at Brand Builders Group: reputation always precedes revenue. And so if you are not hitting your company's revenue goals, then very likely not enough people know about you. And so this episode is going to be a real key asset for you to put together a strategy to be better known in front of your ideal market and to get that press that you may not have gotten up until this point. So I can't wait to share this interview with you. I think you're going to love Rachael and be just blown away by her wealth of knowledge. So with that, I'm going to turn it over for Rachael and for this interview. Rachael, it's so good to have you on the podcast today. You are such a wealth of knowledge when it comes to thought leadership and press and building our brands. And I know that my audience wants to know like everything you have to share about how we can grow our visibility in our brands. And so I'm just super excited to have you on today. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm excited about this.
Yes. Well, I wanted to start off just because, if somebody goes to your website, they'll see that you really help female leaders and entrepreneurs become known as thought leaders. And it's interesting because I think this term thought leader, it gets thrown around a lot today. And frankly, there's people who are calling themselves thought leaders who maybe shouldn't be. And there's a lot of people who are also really, really qualified, true experts in their field who are relatively invisible and kind of like the best kept secret in their space, which is really frustrating for them as well. And so I'd love to just hear from your perspective. First, how do you define a thought leader? And then I also want to know about why you personally are passionate about this and what got you into this work.
Yeah, so I define a thought leader as someone who has a very particular expertise in a super niche area, whether it's in business, whether it's a personal expertise, but they are the master and they are the guru and they are the person that people go to and flock to for that sort of insight and advice. So that's what I would describe as a thought leader. It's someone who has built a personal brand around their expertise.
I love that. And I mean, it's the perfect scenario, right? It's the thing that everyone wants who is running a business or in charge of generating revenue, is to be sought after, to not have to go out and, hunt down clients and try to sell yourself on price and compete with a million other people. It's like when you are respected in that way, when you've built that type of a reputation, it's a totally different energy. It's a different dynamic. People are coming to you more of a pull than a push. So could you share with us a little bit about like your background and why you got into this work, why you're passionate about this work?
Yeah, so I started a business in my college dorm room years ago called the Brand Girls. I love personal branding. And at the time, myself and my team of coaches, we were training college women to define their own personal brand and really set themselves apart as they were going after their first jobs and internships. And I learned really quickly that when women are able to define their personal brand, their special factor, let's say, that they can go on to do really incredible things. And I found that many times they're qualified, but without the right positioning and without the right stamp of approval, credibility, it's hard to be seen. So I did that work for a while, and I keynote spoke at 50 plus universities across the United States, and I had so much fun doing it. And along the way, I was really positioning myself as a thought leader around supporting women to define their own brand. And I was getting featured in press outlets, Forbes, Teen Vogue, Glamour, and speaking on these stages and doing these big partnerships with brands like Kendra Scott and Vera Bradley and FabFitFun. And I had so much fun doing the work because I found that the more that I positioned myself as a thought leader, the more opportunities came my way so I can really do the work that I feel like I was put here to do. So the more calls I got to speak on stages and really like share my mission to empower these women to build confidence. And along the way, I was organically, helping my girlfriends who are also female entrepreneurs in this market to position themselves. So whether they're interior designers, whether they have a tech startup, or whether they own a marketing firm, I found over and over again that they had a brilliant business. Right? Like they were doing really awesome work, and, they had amazing clients, or they're really like known for their expertise, but from a visibility and also credibility perspective, they didn't have that stamp of approval to be seen as a thought leader. They had like all the material, but the positioning wasn't there. So I organically was, connecting with these women and saying like, hey, like, have you ever thought about sharing your message on stage? Whether it's a paid speaking gig or a free speaking gig, like you can use the stage to generate leads. And they would say things like, I don't even know what that looks like, right? Like, how do I get that? And I would say, okay, well, maybe if we can get you a feature in Forbes, that will make you feel awesome. So you can say, you're featured in Forbes for this work, and that can support you to convert those speaking gigs. So over and over again, I found that just with a few tiny little tweaks, that they were able to have that stamp of approval to get inbound clients, to be called for speaking gigs, and to be sought after as someone for the media to interview if they needed a certain piece of advice in a particular category. And I found that it really supported their business and also their confidence in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing that I think is fun about what you do is the speaking gigs, the press, the paid partnerships. It's really like the sexy stuff, right?
Yeah.
It's the fun stuff. And I like how you call it the stamp of approval, because at the end of the day, I think love it or hate it, it is what it is. People are looking for credibility. They're looking for something to verify that they're making the right choice in booking you to speak, in working with you, in paying you $10,000 to coach them, 5,000, whatever it is. And so if you're not being intentional about how are you positioning yourself as credible for people who don't know you yet, you're missing out on opportunities. And with that being said, one of the things that I see a lot is because these things are all so sexy and so exciting, and it's like fun to think about yourself getting these types of features or being on these stages. Sometimes people will go straight there and they may not have some of the foundational elements of their brand in place. So I would love if you could speak to, is there an order you would recommend people do it where it's like you should have these things in place before you start going after press and attention, or is it get it as early and often as you can? Like, what's your perspective on that?
Yeah, I think it really depends on who you are and what sort of business that you're in. I'll give you a quick example. So I was working with a client last week, and I do these things called Lux Days, and they're like a luxury day. And we did them in downtown Charleston. I also host them in Atlanta, or I fly to a client city. But this client in particular, she flew out to Charleston with me. We did the whole 5-star hotel experience, and it's a very, very intensive day, 9 to 5, and we're buckling in on our brand. Now, she did, or she has a background in corporate consulting, and now she's gone off and started her own business and is trying to generate more corporate consulting clients and also keynote speaking. And we were chatting about the types of stages that she wants to be on, the types of corporations that she wants to speak to. And in order to generate the keynote fee that we really want her in, the $7,000 to $10,000 range, we were talking, it would be very helpful for her to have stamp press approvals, to have Forbes, Wall Street Journal behind her, because those really give you that stamp of approval that you need to start those conversations. Now, it doesn't mean that she can't do speaking leading up to that. And it also doesn't mean that she can't get a $7,000 to $10,000 speaking gig if she doesn't have those stamps of approval with the press, but it really does support the conversations. So I always like to think about it like this. Like, if you are planning a wedding and you see someone is featured in Vogue, then that person attracts your interest and you're curious to learn more. And also, when they tell you your fee, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm expecting them to be a lot higher than the normal event planner.
Yes.
So when we're trying to talk about like the next range of those speaking gigs, it is helpful to have those pieces of press to back you up.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I think it's just, sometimes we're so close to it, we don't see it. And being able to put yourself in the shoes of someone who's about to book you and to say, what would I be looking for? What would help me feel more comfortable, expecting a higher fee and then paying a higher fee as well. So one of the things I wanted to talk with you about specifically today is press and getting press. And this is something where I think you have so much expertise, and selfishly, I want to learn from you here too, because this is so much a part of your background. And yeah, and I think part of like your secret sauce and what you're brilliant at. And I think one of the things that's confusing today for people who want to get press is there are so many different places that we could be seen and be visible. And if you think about it today, like anyone can be a media company, right? So this podcast could be considered press. Forbes is also considered press. And there's all these different versions of it, whether it's podcast, digital, print, radio, TV. And so it can feel really overwhelming. Yeah. What would your advice be to someone who maybe is newer in their journey, but they need to put together a strategy to start getting more press? Where should we start? Where do we even start with all of it?
Yeah, no, totally. I understand it. And it is an overwhelming process. So I would say, and something I do with my clients, like one of the first places we start is we say, okay, what's our dream press outlets? And we determine the dream press outlets based off of where our dream audience is hanging out. So my fashion clients, clients in the beauty space, interior design, more in the lifestyle arena, those are more of the Oprah magazine, right? The Vogue, the Elle magazine, Harper's Bazaar, where I may have a client that, like we were just saying earlier, is in the keynote consulting space in the corporate arena. And Vogue, who cares for that market, right? So that's a New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Forbes, Entrepreneur, that sort of element. So I would say, first of all, figure out what are your dream press outlets based off of where your dream market is hanging out. And if you are a local business and is your dream to serve on the local level, it might make sense for you just to go after local outlets. Or I recently worked with an architectural engineer, and her dream outlets were in trade publications that only like this super specific, teeny tiny little niche reads. And those people that are the readers are her dream clients. So we went after very specific and tiny trade publications with about like 2,000 subscribers, which is way different than going after a Forbes feature. And I always like to say that this whole press thing, like I figured it out along the way. When I first got started, when I was with my first company, the Brand Girls, I was speaking at universities and, trying to sell our programs and packages to college women to support them. And I felt standing up there that it would be supportive to my messaging to have a press stamp of approval. So I remember spending one summer sending out over 600 emails, Facebook messages, LinkedIn notes. Like I had no clue to these editors, to these different media contacts, trying to pitch myself. And I was doing it all wrong. And I would say like one really quick piece of advice is do your research and reach out to the right editor. If you are going after something like if you have a restaurant, for example, like you need to go after the hospitality editor. That's the contact, not the editor-in-chief, not someone that does media planning and media buying. Do your research to make sure that you're reaching out to the right contact. And after 600 outreaches, I ended up getting a hit from Teen Vogue and getting the right editor. And she ended up, finding some synergy on a piece that she was currently working on and needed a quick piece of input and advice. And she was super supportive and so kind. And I said, I'm so happy you responded to me. And she said, yeah, because I was looking for your expertise, and kind of explained the game to me during a phone conversation. So I'm very grateful for her. Hopefully share that to help someone else.
Yeah. Well, I think there's so many important things in what you just said. One of the things that stands out to me is that it can be a volume game. Yeah. And so just knowing that it's going to take a number of attempts, it's going to take a number of at-bats to get that one person who happens to be looking for what you do. And there's also ways we can be more strategic about it, which is where I think
totally.
you can share. Like you don't have to send out the 600 if you.
No, oh my gosh.
And so I want to talk more about how to pitch the press. But before we do, I also want to ask you, I love the idea of making this dream press list. And I think it's inspirational and it's exciting. And I also think a lot of people may wonder, does it make sense for me to go straight to, O Magazine, or should I approach it more like stepping stones? Like, are there kind of smaller credibility check marks along the way where maybe it does make sense for me to be in a bigger publication given my audience? However, I've never had any press. So should I just shoot straight for the moon and see if it happens, or should I do stepping stones along the way?
I think what you need to think about first, or that client needs to think about first, is what's their goal with press. Mm-hmm. So if you are looking for these full page features, like in an InStyle magazine, and you want it like to see it at the grocery store, that's like a very, very hard piece of press to get. If you are looking to have a quote, one quote, two quotes, right? A little paragraph in some of these digital online pieces, that's awesome. It's also a tricky piece of press, but it's not a full page spread. So that's a little bit easier. If your goal is to sell products that are at a lower cost, getting a national feature and outlet is tricky, but would be like your main goal. So it really depends what you're looking for. So with my speaking clients, I always say to them, you don't need this massive full page feature to say that you're featured in Forbes. You can be interviewed with 3 other experts and, collaborate and all share your expertise in an article. And you can still say as featured in Forbes because you collaborated on a really interesting article. So I would first say what's your goal, right? So if you are someone looking to just have that stamp of approval, then participating and collaborating in an article makes sense for you. But if you're looking to sell a bunch of your items, let's say you have a product-based business, then being featured as 1 or 2 lines in an article is most likely not going to generate a ton of leads and sales for you.
Super helpful. So it's really beginning with the end in mind.
Yes.
Knowing that it's just about, again, being intentional with what's actually going to support your efforts.
So to your question, right? To your question of where should you start? You should start with what's your goal? What are you hoping to get out of it? Mm. And if it's to sell a ton of product and you feel like selling a ton of product will make sense for you to be featured in a local publication, go for it. Where for me, because I do a lot of speaking around the United States and I'm starting to dabble, speaking abroad, me being featured in a local publication, like my dream clients and the conference bookers aren't reading it. So it doesn't make sense for me to do that. I'm not going to move a ton of sales or have a lot of speaking conversations there,
Yeah.
where it may make sense for a different sort of business.
Well, and what you're sharing here, Rachel, it reminds me of this quote from Brendan Burchard. And he says, never underestimate the power of one.
Mm.
And I think it's so easy to get caught up in the vanity of, I want that big logo on my website. And for some people, that may be what they need to support their brand. But for others, I love how you brought up, think about what really makes sense. And for some people, it's the smaller trade publications. It's the small, it's like the local journals. And
Sure.
it was interesting. We were hosting an event for some of our clients last week in Nashville, and we asked, how many people would be excited to go on a podcast that gets 200 downloads a month? And most people they're building their brand, and they're like, probably wouldn't be worth my time. And then we asked the question of, well, what if it was 200 of your ideal clients who are loyal fans and followers of that host? And it changes it, right? And you kind of think about, if I was speaking to an audience, I was on stage in front of an audience of 200 ideal customers, that would probably make sense. And so I think we're sometimes quick to discredit.
Yes, it's not a vanity thing. That's not how I look at press. I look at it as an opportunity for you to be seen by your dream market and to support them in making a decision if you're the right fit for them or not.
Yeah.
And to your point, I'd love to talk in front of 15 women, female entrepreneurs at a mastermind. Like, that is my dream audience, and I've had some incredible opportunities to speak on larger stages, but really, like, where my dream market is usually in smaller audiences.
Yeah, I'm there with you. I will take the small intimate group all day
Yeah,
long.
I love
It's
this
just,
connection. And
yeah,
also it's that you're able to really attract and connect with people that really need your messaging, where sometimes in a larger group, um, maybe not so much. It just depends on the audience.
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I want to get just some high level advice from you on how we should pitch to the press. And obviously, this is part of what people hire you for, so I don't want you to give it all away. But
Yeah.
if you can share with us maybe some things we should keep in mind. You already mentioned going to the right person, which is like light bulb, duh, right? But light bulb
Yeah.
for many of us. What else should we be thinking about how to approach and pitch to the press?
So, what I would say would be really helpful is to think about yourself and your expertise in a variety of angles.
Hmm.
So, um, for me, I pitch to the press. I do both the business publications, like the Forbes and Business Insiders I've been featured in, but I also have Teen Vogue and Glamour behind me as well. Those types of outlets have different angles, stories, and messaging involved. So with a Glamour magazine, they were doing a feature that I was able to collaborate on how to quit your day job for the new year. So that was super fun. Or Teen Vogue, like how to present your best self and what to wear for these different types of presentations. So those are very much like on a personal lifestyle level, where Forbes is more of like how to raise up women in the workplace. Those are the type of ideas I pitch there. So I would say create a list. Step one, come up with maybe 5 to 10 ideas of different angles that you can provide. And then go after specific outlets that have those types of angles. So if you feel like you are a master at juggling being a stay-at-home mom and running a side hustle business, like that is an area of expertise. And at the same time, you might have another area of expertise that is systems and operations. So the systems and operations angle, that might be a great feature for a business insider, where a feature about being a stay-at-home mom and juggling all of the work, that might be an awesome feature for O Magazine. So think about yourself in different angles, and then also think about where's your dream client hanging out and how can you reach out to the correct editor that covers those sorts of articles.
Ah, this is so good. This is so good. It makes so much sense too.
Okay.
When you talk about it, it's
Yeah.
like, okay, it's simple, right? It's just thinking in terms of what's going to be valuable to somebody else, to the editor, to the audience.
And when you reach out, share that these are some areas, bullet point out a few ideas of, these are some topics that I've seen you cover, and I share a similar passion and mission. And here's some areas that I think I can support you on. If you have any upcoming articles, like I'd love to connect on it. So it's really like not a one-time, like pitching one story, one and done. It's about building a relationship with these editors.
Are there any like no-nos in terms of how we reach out? I mean, is it mostly by email? Is that preferred? Is it social media? Is it anything goes?
Yeah, so I reach personally, what I do and I tell my clients to do is reach out via email. And I would say if possible, and you're not if it's possible, don't have an assistant do this for you, or don't have a media company do this for you, or PR group. If you have the time, and this is something that's really important to you on your list, I would take ownership of it, because you're trying to build a really strong personal connection with the editors. So
Mm.
tell them that you're there as a resource, build that connection, reach out via email. You can connect with them on LinkedIn. And I always like to say, follow up, 2 times. And if you don't hear back, you don't hear back, move on. And if they need you, they will reach out. That's something I've learned along the way.
Yeah. And I'm so glad you brought that up, because I'm working with a lot of clients right now who are, they're creating media kits, they're wanting to get featured. A lot of my clients they're looking to go like the podcast route of getting features in podcasts. And I think there's a perception that if they reach out themselves, they're going to seem like they're not busy enough, or they're not important enough to have an assistant doing it. But you just said really the total opposite, which also makes sense, which is it's the importance of the relationship. I think especially in these higher level opportunities where they may not be a yes right away, but like you said, you're building and nurturing the relationship over time, and that needs to be directly with you.
Totally. And so when they're thinking about a piece later on, like maybe a month from now, they're assigned an article and they're like, oh yeah, I remember Elyse, she reached out to me. Let me reach back out. And then your goal is to become part of their Rolodex. So as they're working on new pieces that they reach out to you directly, with Forbes in particular, I've done 3 articles with one woman. And, if I'm in alignment with the piece that she's working on, she's so kind and generous to reach out to me. And that's because we built a relationship together over time.
Absolutely. Well, and that leads into the final question that I have, and then I want you to tell people where they can go to find out more and connect with you and work with you. But, if we are trying to prioritize this into kind of the mix of what we do every week, as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, there's a million different things you could be doing at any given time. And I would imagine that this could seem overwhelming, and this could seem like it's going to take a lot of time and become a part-time job. I also think I read somewhere on your website that it doesn't need to take more than like an hour a week to be really consistent with this. So I'd love to hear, like, what are the things we should be doing on a weekly basis if we're going to really incorporate press and getting buzz and attention into our business strategy? What are just some of the things we should be scheduling in, and does it have to take a long time, or can it be done pretty efficiently?
Yeah, so I'd say up front, it will take a little bit of time. You have to make sure that your brand positioning is correct,
Mm.
right? You need to make sure that you have a very particular expertise in a certain market.
Yeah.
People, whether it's conference organizers for speaking, or corporations that are looking to do partnerships, or media representatives, they are looking for an expertise. People pay to be taught by experts. So you need to make sure that you are very specific in your expertise. So just saying that you run a marketing agency in Atlanta, there's a lot of other people that run marketing agencies.
Yeah.
So step 1, make sure you've totally defined your super niche. Who do you serve, and how are you different from everybody else that serves that market?
Love
Make
it.
sure that your website matches that messaging. Make sure your LinkedIn matches that messaging, the biography, right? Like everything matches that very specific super niche. And then after all those pieces are put together, it really should be taking you about an hour a week to be doing these visibility outreach opportunities and sessions. So I would say with speaking, maybe spend 20, 30 minutes a week reaching out to dream conferences and filling out applications. Spend the other 30 minutes or so reaching out to a few ideal partners and also the correct media contacts. Really, the goal is that your brand, your super niche is so clear and your expertise is so incredibly visible when they go to your website, and you are crystal clear on who you serve and how you're different than everyone else. So when you reach out to the conferences, when you reach out to the media outlets, they're able to say essentially, we serve the same market. Your audience is my audience and you have an expertise serving them. Come on board. We need you. That's what the goal is. But you need to make sure that the upfront work is done.
Yeah.
In order to do all the outreach.
Yes, it's the piece that it's not always as fun because it can kind of hurt your head to think about what's the message, what's the audience, getting the brand aligned. But I'm glad you brought that up, because again, it's just that foundational work to really maximize the efforts. Because if you're putting in the time and energy to do this outreach and become more visible, we always talk with our clients. It's like you actually don't really want a lot of press and attention until how are you going to generate leads and clients from it? Where are you going to direct people? Is your brand buttoned up? And so it's just the
Totally.
discipline.
Yeah, I work with my clients and we do 5 steps from publicity to profits. And I'm so passionate about that, because you can have press all day, every day, but how are you using it to, generate more leads, make more money, get seen more? So yeah, that's a second part of the conversation. But having strategy in mind is important.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Well, I told you this the first time that we met for coffee several months ago, and it's just, I think you're someone I'm going to have back on again and again, because you have such in-depth experience in partnerships and press and speaking. And I know these are things that so many of my listeners want. So I want to say thank you for just sharing such great strategies. And it was very tactical, which I think people really appreciate. And I would love if you could tell people about where can they connect with you? Tell us about your Lux days. Tell us all the things for people who are just loving this and who want to get more of you.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. This is exciting, and I love connecting for coffee. And you and I were we follow all the same people. We do the same things. So I'm glad we
sisters.
So you can find me at rachelbozsik.com, RACHAELBOZSIK.com. And one of my absolute favorite ways to work with clients, it's called a Lux Day. So I think I mentioned this earlier, but I host them in Charleston, I host them in Atlanta, or I fly to a client city. And I'm actually doing one tomorrow. But they are full throttle intensive days where the goal is for you to generate paid speaking from them, press, or big major partnerships. I work with females specifically on this, and really passionate about it. We do everything from copy and paste pitch templates to designing a speaker's website to designing a partnership outreach strategy, for 5-6-figure partnerships. And my clients, which is really exciting, are making back their investment usually within a month of their Lux Day. And they're very, very strategy focused. You don't have to know who your brand is and where you fit in the market. We figure that out during the day together.
I love it. I love it.
So much fun, and there's a lot of glamour and luxe involved, and I love spoiling my clients, so we have a good time together.
They just sound fun. If nothing else, to hang out at a nice hotel and be spoiled, but to also get really incredible strategy for your press and
totally. One of my clients last week, she or not last week, sorry, about 2 months ago, last week she got a feature in Fast Company, and now she's partnering with the Girl Scouts on a national level. So a lot of magic can happen. It's just really hunkering down and figuring out the 1, 2, 3 strategy behind it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Rachael, this is amazing. I always learn so much every time I speak with you. So thank you so much. And I really encourage everybody to go follow you online. I mean, your social media is amazing. Everything is gorgeous. Like I just enjoy
You're sweet.
being in your online world because it's so
Oh,
beautiful. And she's got great strategies. I know you've got a great freebie on your website as well
I
about
do,
getting.
yes. Yeah, it's a 15 thought leadership feature opportunities. So
Yeah.
that really will complement this conversation if anyone's interested.
Yeah, I downloaded that recently and it was super, super valuable. So thank you for that. I encourage people to go get that. And thank you for your wealth of knowledge and so generously sharing everything today.
Thank you for having me. It's a big honor. Thank you.